Good morning, everybody. Welcome to an unexpected podcast. Today we've got myself in Boston, Mick in London, and Rainier in South Korea. Welcome, everybody. And we are going to be talking about some of our favorite legendary legions today. So we're going to talk through the legendary legion, talk through some of the legendary legions, how they work, and how you would kind of build a list based on the legendary legion. But before we get to that, Mick, you had something you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, so we've actually been thinking recently that there is a format which we do, which is at the beginning of every episode, we review someone's list. So we had this idea that we would do an episode of like a Q&A where you guys can ask us a bunch of questions like, let's say, why does Matt always disagree with Mick? Well, obviously because he's wrong. So...
Why else would you disagree with Bill?
Well, yeah.
Other than he's wrong.
Exactly, yeah. So, so if you guys want to post questions in the comments of the podcast, especially on the YouTube channel, then we're gonna try to collect a bunch of them and then do an episode, perhaps at some point in March or April, where we just answer your questions. So yeah, let us know in the comments, and we're gonna start gathering them.
And when you do that, make sure you specify, hey, this is a question for the Q&A episode, as opposed to just a generic question, because we can keep an eye out for those and collect those and make sure we answer as many of them as we can on air. So just before we begin, I just do want to say that we are available on YouTube, of course, and we're available also in a podcast format on most podcast feeds. So if you want to download and listen to us audibly without watching on YouTube, you can do that as well.
All right, so this week's list we have from Alexander Spurl. Sorry if I haven't pronounced your name correctly. He's saying, here's a list to review for a good versus evil environment specifically. Strange points 866. So it starts with Lady of Light being the general. Then Legolas on horse, leading 4 Mirkwood elves with elven bows and glaives, 1 sentinel, 2 Mirkwood elves with glaives, 6 Mirkwood elves with shields, and 2 Mirkwood cav with shields. Then we have an alliance of Ganburigan and 14 Woses warriors. And then we have an alliance of Aragorn with Halberd with a banner mounted, and 2 Dunedain with spears. So this comes up to 36 models, 17 might, 4 bows, 6 elven bows. Oh yeah, so 10 bows in that case, and 15 blowpipes. So when I'm looking at this thing, I'm like, what's actually So it looks like this is a list where you have a front line of Mirkwood elves supported by Woses warriors.
Do you though?
Or yeah, probably.
Because I mean, it looks.
I mean, Mirkwood elves have shields, so you probably put them in front of.
Some do, some don't. 6 of them don't. I mean, this is he has it set up. I mean, you could do it that way, but he also has it set up so that the Mirkwood elves could kind of fight in their own little.
It could be their own thing. Mirkwood, yeah, but then Moses warriors would be just fight 3.
They'd be on their own.
Squishy things on their own.
Yep.
Halberd with banner mounted is very good. His banner is a 6-inch banner. So he's able to cover the entire list. Aragorn himself is quite strong in combat. So is Legolas and so is Galadriel. Obviously, the list has a good protection against shooting from with blinding light. Plus, it has a lot of its own shots. In fact, if you get very close to this list, then you are getting shot at by Legolas, the Dunedain, the elves, and the 15 Woses blowpipes as well. So yeah, there is a lot of stuff going on. I think I'm not really sure how to make too many changes here, because it's very specifically like a cookie cutter of I'm gonna take some cool things from here, cool things from there and there. I would be worried about only 36 models at 866 points. Where half of them are just defense 3, and the other half like what defense 4 or 5.
Yeah. So I mean, this list does cover a lot of bases, right? It's got Lady of Light, so it's going to cover it's going to cover the anti-shooting and anti-magic and anti-ring wraith. It checks those blocks.
Definitely.
It's got Legolas, who also kind of counters ring wraiths and picks people off. So I think it's going to be good there. It's got the Wozes with their hatred of orcs and Uruk-hai, so they're going to be doing a decent amount of damage to orcs and Uruk-hai.
Especially for good versus evil environment. Yeah.
Especially for a good versus evil environment. It's got the elves, so it's going to have a lot of fight 5 across the board. So it's probably going to have the higher fight value in a good versus evil environment. He's got Halberd with his banner that is basically going to take care of a terror wall. So he's got that block checked. And he's got a decent amount of shooting, which combined with the light is going to mean he's going to be drawing his opponent toward him. So I think he's got that block checked. I guess so. So the problem is that you're right. It's going to be this is a squishy list. When he does not have like a defense 6, defense 7 shield wall that's going to be able to stop opposing folks. Once things come to grips, with the exception of the 6 Mirkwood elves with shield, everything in this list is going to be defense 5 or below. I mean, the Roses are going to be defense 3. So you don't want people going into them. So I think that's the vulnerability of the list. And I guess if I was going to have one suggestion with this, it's not clear to me who kind of the front rank is supposed to be. Because you do have the 6 elves with shield. And then you've got a bunch of glaives that are going to stand behind them. You've got Woz's warriors who can stand behind them, and you've got the Dunedain with spear that can stand behind that. It's not clear who can fight in the front rank of this list, and that's what I'm wondering. That's kind of what I'm wondering about here is maybe move some numbers around so that you have more Mirkwood elves with shield that can stand in the front rank. And then you back them up with the Woz's warriors and the Dunedain where possible. And I think that's probably where I would go. You could probably save some points at that point. I mean, you've got 4 elves with bows. It's not clear to me that with 14, 15 blowpipes from the Wozes and Legolas and the 2 Dunedain, you need those elves, and I wonder if those warband slots would be better used just with more Mirkwood elves with shield that are defense 6 and can stand in front of the Wozes.
Yeah, I actually wonder about the need for having 2 Dunedain as well, because things could be cleaned up a bit within Legolas's warband. You could get more shields and have more of like a proper infantry line if you were to drop one of the Dunedain, because you're not going to lose numbers because you can take one more Wozy warrior. So the numbers are going to stay the same, but you then gain the points to actually add more shields. I would even say opposite to Matt, I would add like a 5th bow, just because then why not? If you have the spare points, because the warbots are filled up anyway.
I'm wondering also here. Somebody else talk here. I'm going to run some numbers. I have another. I have another idea.
It's one of those things where I agree with Matt. Where like you don't know who's front rank guy. I wonder if his thought process, and I know it's not actually optimized this way, but he's got 6 with shield, and he's got 6 with glaives, and then 2 Mirkwood cav, and then 14. I wonder if his thought process was genuinely to do Wozes behind Wozes, elves behind elves, and then like that was what he was thinking. Obviously, it would make sense to do more Woses either behind or in front of the elves, more likely behind, just because they have all spears, whereas the Mirkwood elves have half glaive, half shield. But I mean, based on this list, I would genuinely think he built the list so it's front rank elves in the front and back, and then front rank, back rank Woses
Yeah,
together.
you could even like splice it up to where you have like elves in the front line rank, Woses in the back rank, and then the other other Woses in the front rank, elves in the back rank. So it is kind of you're right. It would make you assume that it'd be like an elf warband.
I think it has to be Woses in the back though, because there's 6 with shield, and then there's 6 with glaive for the elves. But with the Woses in the back, that can support all of them. If you were to do it the reverse, where Woses were in the front, then only 6 elves could support in the back. And so then, but then you could do like a weird combination where you have 6 with shield in front, supported by 6 Woses behind, and then 6 warriors with glaive behind with 6 Woses.
Yeah,
weird.
Yeah, that's what I meant. It does sound weird, but I don't. It would optimize his fight 5 in the whole like field of play, I guess. Are Dunedain only fight 4, right?
They're fight 4, yeah.
Ooh, okay, yeah. That's I don't know. That's what I'd imagine he'd do, like a weird splicing.
Can I just double check something? So hatred rule. It says here a model with a special rule adds 1 to their wound rolls when fighting in combat against the enemy models with the keyword listed. So you will get +1 against like all those goblins, orcs, etc. But does that mean that when you're supporting the line,
Yeah, I don't know.
Don't get the +1?
Yeah, because there's that whole confusion of what is considered being involved in a fight
in combat.
Yeah, so on this
they
basis,
may not get it if they're fighting in the second.
on this basis, they need to be fighting in the front rank to actually.
So if we had an army of Woses though, and they were fighting orcs, are we saying only the front rank of the Woses, if they were supported by other Woses, would get the reroll?
That is what it sort of implies here.
That is the implication.
We'd have to check the FAQs.
Okay.
So maybe if you're fighting orcs, you put the Woses in the front rank. Although, I mean, I played with them. They die quickly.
Yeah, but that's not such a bad idea, because you have the 2 attacks, you have fight value 5, and you have a banner on your whole army. Like, you're gonna be winning vast majority of combats anyway, and then you get +1 to wounds with your front rank.
Yeah. I mean, I was also kind of working the numbers on this. So if you drop the 2 Dunedain, that's 52 points.
Get it down to 800.
Well, if you drop the 2 Dunedain, you could actually replace Legolas with some and maybe drop a Woses warrior or 2. You could get some version of Thranduil.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yes, and then add the Aura of Dismay.
Yeah, the Aura of Dismay, because that was something I think this list would really benefit from is a Terror Aura
with Lady of Light giving
with Lady of Light sitting next to it. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Because I mean, what this list doesn't want to have happen is just they get crushed by Morannons all across the line, and the Morannons will lose a bunch of fights, but probably but aren't going to die all that often. Whereas kind of the elves and the Woses will kind of die like flies, or even just against regular orcs. But if you get a Terra bubble up on this army where only a few guys are charging in, then then you can really kind of go to town on them if you've got instead you've got 2 elves and some spear supports ganging up on one opponent. So I think that may be something to think about. I mean,
well, let me ask you this: would you consider maybe adding someone like Radagast to the list, and then you get the Aura of Dismay, plus you get a second magic caster?
But who do you take out to get Radagast?
No, you can't. If anything, the other option could be, if you were to drop the 2 Dunedain, you could swap Ganburigan's Warband for something like Tauriel and more Mirkwood Elves. it would then be more of a Lady of Light leading Legolas, Tauriel, and then supported by Arthon and Banner with Halberd. So you're not gonna get the +1, but you're gonna have more normal bowfire and much more survivable front rank.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, it's not clear what Gon Burigan is bringing to this party. To me, I mean,
I think it's just numbers.
yeah, but there are other ways to get numbers,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you could. There's always the classic Army of Laketown.
Mm-hmm. No, that's true. I think that was the plan, though. Was he just wanted
Although
cheap, and plus I think because he says in the thing it's a list for good versus evil environment, so maybe he knew that if he was going to an evil versus good tournament, he would want the Wozes for that +1.
yeah, I mean, they do bring a bunch of blowpipes too. I mean, they do
Yeah.
bring a bunch of shooting. So, but anyway, I think dropping the 2 Dunedain and kind of maybe figuring out what you can do with that other 56 points, I think is probably something that's worth doing. And I think, boy, if you can figure out how to get the Circlet of Kings and the Terror in here, I mean, even if Thranduil's not on his horse and he's just got his extra swords, that would be that'd be kind of an interesting way to go.
It would definitely make that list much more difficult because you can't. Well, you could outshoot it because there's not a whole lot of bows in this, but
but there's poison. There's 15 poison blowpipes. I mean, granted, they have to be closer to be used, but kind of once you get within 12 inches of your opponent, he's probably gonna have to charge you.
Okay. Thank you for your list, Alex. Let us know if you make any changes or if you end up taking this to a tournament. We'd like to hear how you did with it. And we're going to move on to the main topic for today.
All right, so onto our main subject today. We've got our favorite Legendary Legions. So I thought I'd kick us off with the Return of the King Legendary Legion. The army composition of this one involves Aragorn, Strider. He can have an Elven Cloak. Then we've got Legolas, who can have an armor and an Elven Cloak. Gimli with an Elven Cloak. The King of the Dead. Then Heralds of the Dead, who can carry shields. And then Warriors of the Dead, who can carry banners, shields, spears. And finally, the Riders of the Dead. So the additional rules of this legion are that your army must always include both Aragorn and the King of the Dead. And Aragorn is always the army's leader. So that's about 260 points already, which are spent on those two characters. Additionally, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli may all lead Warriors of the Dead and Riders of the Dead in this army list. So unlike the usual Army of the Dead that you would find in the book, you can actually have Legolas, Gimli, and Aragorn leading troops. There are special rules. The Heir of Isildur. Aragorn does not have to pay any points for Anduril. He automatically has it, and it is free. Then we've got the King of the Dead. The King of the Dead gains the Harbinger of Evil special rule, which is the one that decreases opponent's courage by 1 within a range of 12 inches, I believe it was. Or 6? Yeah, it's 12.
Yeah.
And then the other one is Fight for Us and Regain Your Honor. Spirit models from this army count as being in range of a banner if Aragorn is within 6 inches. So Aragorn is like the centerpiece character here, obviously the same way that he was in the books and films, where he is leading this thing, and if they fight for him, they will regain their honor, and they will be able to peacefully disappear into nothingness. So essentially, the really cool thing about this legion is that everything except Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, everything causes terror. And because you don't need any captains or heralds or anything like that to lead troops, you can actually just stack them up and have quite a lot of them. So your basic troops are defense 8, terror causing, and courage 6. So they won't really ever care about being broken. The army will just fight on forever, pretty much. So here's a sample list I came up with for 800 points. This army works really well on very high points levels, not so well on low points levels because you just don't have enough points for all your troops. So this one here is for 800 points. It's got Aragorn. Obviously, he carries Anduril for free. Then we've got the King of the Dead. Then Legolas, dressed in an armor. Then there's 13 Warriors of the Dead with shield, 12 Warriors of the Dead with shield and spear, and 2 Riders of the Dead. So this brings us up to 30 models, which is not very high for 800 points. We have 7 points of might plus Aragorn's 3 might points. The whole army can move pretty quickly with Aragorn's 3 heroic marches. So you're moving like 9 inches per turn, or your cavalry can move even up to 15. I've included 2 Riders of the Dead because really the price of 2 of those is the same as just 3 Warriors of the Dead, and it's nice to have additional models for objectives carrying. And the other thing was, there is a question of whether to include Legolas or Gimli in this configuration. So personally, I prefer Legolas because of his special ability of taking out targets like banners, like kids in Bard's army, or any sort of annoying little characters or targets which are standing on objectives. So ultimately, there isn't very much that can be done with this legion. So you have to have Aragorn and the King of the Dead, and then you put as many warriors as you can put in, and then you add the additional characters and add more warriors. So it's very limiting, but it can be very strong at high points. If I remember correctly, Damien O'Byrne actually won the Throne of Skulls with it at 1,000 points. And he even dressed himself up as the King of the Dead himself. So yeah, it can be a very competitive army if put together well and played correctly.
So how many riders did you have on your list?
So I've put just 2 riders. I wouldn't mind putting like another 1 or 2, but
Yeah.
obviously the more we put, the less warriors we end up having.
Yeah, I mean, at 24 points, Riders of the Dead are expensive, but I think they are necessary in at least small
Definitely,
numbers
yeah.
to grab objectives. Because obviously, what makes this list, I guess, work is Aragorn's perpetual heroic march to get them to close quickly and get wherever they need to get. And I mean, I think this army, just because of the small numbers and just because of the King of the Dead's Harbinger of Evil special rule, tends to want to fight in a ball. And you do need a couple of guys to kind of run off and grab objectives toward the end game. So you said you had, sorry, go ahead.
How many models was it?
I had 30 models.
Yeah. And you know, it's really tough to get the numbers higher than that, I think, in this army, which is really its drawback. But I think you're right about Legolas. I think Legolas is you want at least some shooting ability to drag your opponent towards you, because even if your opponent outshoots you, you've got the ability to shoot horses out from heroes, which makes them tend to want to engage before they end up being dismounted. So have you used this list before?
No, I've played against it. It can be very, very hard to beat, especially if you don't have things like Aura of Command or Bodyguard, because Harbinger and just the overwhelming amount of terror-causing troops is really annoying. And obviously, they're all defense 8 with shields. So again, like, even though you outnumber them by 20 or 30, so many times either you're not going to charge or they just won't be dying.
Yeah.
I've seen it at many events, like at Articon, even at local events in the US and stuff. And 30 seems like a low amount of troops, but like that's actually pretty high for like defense 8, like you said. Like that's ring wraith defense right there. Like,
so it's a bit similar to things like Iron Hills. Those armies always have very low model count, but these things just don't die.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah,
I've seen that too, where it's like you kill 1 or 3 and like you sigh of relief, like, oh gosh, like I killed 3 this turn, like good, I'm actually doing something.
Yeah. And in the meantime, Aragorn is just like chopping things down, killing everything.
Legolas is dehorsing.
Yeah.
yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah, it is kind of funny because in this list, to a certain extent, the squishy thing that always gets shot at is actually like Aragorn and Legolas.
yeah.
Which is something to be careful of. I mean, when I played this list and beaten this list, the reason it tends to go down is Aragorn dies. And you need to kind of be very careful with Aragorn in the approach that he doesn't, because everything's going to be shooting at Aragorn because nobody's going to bother shooting at the King of the Dead. And you need to be careful to screen him off with as many dead guys as you can during the approach march so he doesn't get plinked.
Well, then that makes it harder for heroic marching as well, because when you're calling heroic march, your hero has to move first.
Well, no.
Friends, no?
Yeah, no. So, all right. So this is actually something to talk about because this is a strategy you may want to use with Aragorn. So there's a couple of different ways you can kind of heroic march from the back. One of which is to leave a channel open that he can go through. So you have, a wall of probably a 2 deep wall of dead in front of him with then this 1 figure wide channel where Aragorn can go like an inch to the side and then dart forward. The other thing you can do, because heroic march, unlike heroic move, does not have to be called first.
No, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can have your wall in front of you. You can have like 1 or 2 guys just kind of move forward and out of the way, their normal move. And then Aragorn moves and calls.
What I meant really was that you still have to move some other guys. So like you're not, so it's like your whole ball will not always be benefiting from it. So you gotta move some other guys. Then Aragorn moves. Everyone else then gets to move 9. But some of the guys then start lagging behind.
Yeah, there's a couple guys in the back, but yeah, I mean, if you kind of work with it, you can always cycle it. So there's always like 2 guys in the back, and then they cycle. The next turn they'll move 9, and they cycle back up towards the front.
Sure.
And they can bubble up. So you can do it one way or the other. But this is not one. If you're facing somebody with bows and you are not like starting right in their face, this is not one where you want Aragorn to be like leading the charge cinematically in the front rank, because he's going to attract every arrow in the other guy's army.
Well, yeah, because the arrows fly through the other troops, so no one will actually be shooting at the other guys.
That's right.
They're going to be shooting straight at him.
Yeah, I mean, that actually is. We were actually just watching The Return of the King last night, and there's the scene when they're inside the mountain, and Legolas tries to shoot the King of the Dead in the head, and the arrow just kind of like flies through his head. And it would be amusing if there was some sort of special rule that allowed that to happen. So Aragorn is like charging up using his 2 ranks of the dead as cover, and the arrow just flies through the bodies of both of them and skewers him in the center of the head.
Well, that's almost something that you get from calling heroic accuracy.
Yep.
Because then everything gets rerolled. So I was thinking here, like with this Legion, like it doesn't really scale up or down very, very easily. So if you were to go to something like 750 points, then you would probably just drop Legolas, add some more warriors. If you went down to like 700 points, you kind of have to have Aragorn King and some warriors. If you went to like 1,000 points, then you can potentially add in Gimli and some extra warriors, but there's not very much variety in it. It's just pretty much regardless what point level you play, is Aragorn King, some warriors. That's your army.
Yeah, so I am kind of curious whether Gimli has ever been included in this list.
Well, for theme, definitely.
Well, yeah.
I did see Gimli in this list. Actually, I went up against it at a Canadian tournament where it was basically your same build, but they added Gimli and dropped down on the numbers. I didn't think it was as competitive because then the one weakness was, okay, cool, like 24-ish models, I can get through 6 or 8 of the Warriors of the Dead and like have breathing room and like mitigate the heroes. Break him like sooner than you think. Whereas if you have 30 models, it's like just those bodies, the pile in the bottles. And you mentioned it early when you were reviewing the list. Like the terror with Harbinger of each model is just, it sucks. Like 2 guys can stop a whole choke point where you can't pass it because you got to pass a courage test to charge them if you're an evil army, and even if you charge them on a defense of 8, it's really difficult to kill them and get through them. So I like the numbers. I don't think I'd add Gimli unless it was like 1,000.
I mean, I just did a little tweak to the list in Excel, and I tried adding Gimli to make it 1,000, and it's like you only really get like 7 models extra. So it's almost like if you just kept Aragorn, Legolas, and King, you're able to put in like probably like 13 or 14 models extra. So you're probably better off just not adding Gimli ever.
Is it worth putting a Herald of the Dead in this army?
Well, Legolas, King, and Aragorn can bring you 48 models themselves. So if you were putting Herald, you wouldn't be doing it for the reason of expanding warbands. You would be doing it because you just wanted a banner.
Right. Well, I mean, the Herald isn't a banner. I think it's got that weird. So the Herald. I'm looking at the profile now. I suppose it's worth talking about. So the Herald of the Dead is a hero of fortitude, spirit infantry hero. It's fight 4, strength 4. So it's got a higher strength and a higher fight value than your ordinary guys. It is defense 7 because it doesn't carry a shield. So, actually, I'm sorry, you can get a shield for 5 points. So it's probably going to be defense 8 anyway. 2 attacks, 2 wounds, courage 6. It has no might, 3 will, and 2 fate. And its two gimmick rules are first pennant to the dead. So it carries this pennant that is not a banner, but allows friendly spirit models within 3 inches of the pennant to get the resistant to magic special rule, which is I'm not sure how useful that is, given that the models themselves are so tough. Magic tends not to be their downfall, and I think the King of the Dead comes with 6 will or something like that.
Exactly,
yeah. So it's not like, it's not like he's terribly vulnerable to magic, and Aragorn and his buddies don't benefit from it. The other rule they get is the King's Council. If the King of the Dead is within 3 inches of one or more Heralds of the Dead at the start of any phase, he can spend one of the Herald's will points to declare a heroic action instead of spending one of his own might points. And then the Heralds of the Dead also benefit for the King of the Dead and living special rule. So these guys basically turn into might batteries for the King of the Dead, which is useful.
Well, it's a semi might battery because you can only use it for heroic moves, for heroic actions. You can't use it to modify your dice.
Right, you can't use it to modify dice, but you can use it to call heroic actions. I mean, I think these guys have more of an application if you're just running a pure dead army. That's where I've seen them, is in the pure dead army. I'm not sure they've got an application in the Legendary Legion, where you've got Aragorn with his free might point running around, and then you got a bunch of 3 might heroes.
Yeah, and you got to think about it too. Like they're kind of like they just add to the we don't die type of feel, and like you already have that going for you with the Legion, whereas you want more killing power. At least that's how when I've come across them. Again, like in the US, this is like a go-to for a lot of newish players to tournament play, I guess I would say, and they usually like bring all types of variations, and the ones that I thought are the most competitive are the ones that don't bring the Herald, but that's just like based off experience. But it is because they just don't punch. You bring one of the other heroes, you get a punch and the defense with trying to get as many numbers as you can, but the Herald kind of just, he's there, he doesn't die, but he doesn't do much besides that, it seems.
Yeah, I somehow thought the Herald was actually a banner bearer, but it must just be a wrong picture that one day I saw and then never really looked at the Herald again.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you see the picture, he looks like a banner bearer, but that thing that he's carrying is not actually a banner; it's a pennant, and it does different things.
Right.
I mean, there is a Warrior of the Dead banner bearer that you can use. So if you wanted to if you wanted to try and get the victory points for carrying a banner, you got to throw a 25-point banner on one of the Warriors of the Dead, which is probably going to be redundant with Aragorn's 6-inch free banner. But I mean, it does give you the victory points if you want to do that. But it's these are expensive models to begin with, and that's dropping 2 more expensive models to get that banner.
Yeah, I think if I were to go for a Herald, I think I would rather just have a Gimli because for 30 points more, you have a much better fighter. So it's almost like the Herald is like the 5th of 6 joys I would ever pick in this list.
When you're taking the 2,000 point list, you might go with a Herald. All right, so we've been joined by Tim. Welcome, Tim. So I'm going to talk through the Defenders of Helm's Deep list. So this is the list to replicate the guys standing on the walls of Helm's Deep and the Deeping Wall fighting the opponent. So this is a Rohan list that has no horses. In this list, you can get Theoden with heavy armor. You can also buy him a shield, but no horse. Gamling, who can come with the royal standard, but no horse. You can get Aldor, Rohan archer, who I'll talk about in a little bit. Haleth, son of Hama, who I'll talk about in a little bit. You can get King's Huntsman, which you probably should never take under any circumstances. You can get a captain of Rohan with all the bells and whistles except horse. You can get Aragorn. Aragorn only comes as Strider with armor, so you cannot get the pointy sword of doom. This is the movie version of the Defenders of Helm's Deep, not the book version of that Defenders of Helm's Deep. You can get Legolas, and you can give him armor and elven cloak. You can get Gimli. You can give him an elven cloak. And you can also get Haldir with heavy armor and elf bow and give him an elven cloak if you want. You can get a Galadrim captain with his ads, except for the horse. And you can get Warriors of Rohan, Rohan Royal Guard, and Galadrim Warriors. And the way this list is set up, you will note you can have Galadrim Warrior. Galadrim Warriors do not need to be in warbands led by Haldir or Galadrim captains. So you can have, say a captain of Rohan or Aragorn or whomever leading a warband of elves around. And Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli can lead their own warbands. So additional rules, you have to include Theoden. He is always the army leader. That seems to make some sense. All models from the Legendary Legion must have the infantry keyword, which you really have no choice but to do because you can't buy any of them horses. And a Defenders of Helm's Deep Legendary Legion may have a maximum of 33% of its models with the Lorien keyword. So only 1/3 elves, including the heroes.
So that's your bowman.
That's your bowman generally.
And can you spread those in warbands, or do you have to have them in one warband?
No, you can spread them out as much as you want.
Nice.
They are just warriors that can be spread out amongst all of the heroes. The special rules that come with this list are, the first one is Fight in Ranks, which allows friendly Rohan infantry models armed with throwing spears to use them as standard spears in addition to their normal use. However, if they throw their spears in a turn, they cannot then use them as a standard spear in the same turn, which I guess also makes some sense. And in most circumstances, you're not going to be trying to throw a throwing spear and use it as a regular spear at the same time. So this actually makes the throwing spears point sufficient in cases for Rohan infantry.
It actually makes them good, usable.
Well, we'll talk about that. It does make them it certainly makes them usable. I think there are certain circumstances where you may want to do something else with those 2 points, but I guess we'll talk about that when we get to the list. But instead of paying 2 points for just a throwing spear that has kind of limited utility on the infantry guys, you instead are effectively spending 1 point for a throwing spear and 1 point for a regular spear, which is worth spending. Mm-hmm. The next rule is give them a volley. So models in the Legendary Legion armed with either a bow, a longbow, or an elf bow, basically everybody in this list armed with a bow, can increase the range of their type of bow from 24 inches to 30 inches, provided they have not moved that turn. So when these guys stay stationary, they have a 6-inch range advantage on all other bows and crossbows, which is a useful thing in certain scenarios. In a lot of scenarios, you're going to find this doesn't really matter all that much because you're going to start within 24 inches. But in those scenarios where you start a ways away, or perhaps in a Maelstrom of Battle scenario where you have like warbands coming on in different places around the board, that extra 6 inches can be really useful. The last special rule is fall back to the keep. If this force is broken, then warrior models from this force add 1 to their courage value. Additionally, if this force is broken, friendly warrior models may reroll failed courage tests while within 6 inches of Theoden. So this is an army that tends to stick around after it breaks. It does, this special rule, I mean, it's okay. First of all, it only kicks in kind of after you've half lost anyway, because it only kicks in after you've broken. And you tend to have a lot of heroes in this list that have high courage anyway. So it's kind of a rare circumstance where your warriors are going to be passing courage tests, need to pass courage tests in a situation where they would not have stuck around through a stand fast. I guess where it is useful is if you lose priority and somebody comes in and tags all your heroes, you have an increased chance of sticking around, and that's good. And essentially, Theoden gets with a special rule. Theoden gets a 6-inch stand fast, even if he is tagged and can't actually call a stand fast. Everybody within 6 inches of him is going to stick around anyway. So let me talk through the list I came up with here. So this is an 800-point Defenders of Helm Deep list. Warband 1 is Theoden, King of Rohan. He has his shield, which is his 1 upgrade. With him are 7 warriors of Rohan with shield and 4 Galadrim warriors. And the 4 Galadrim warriors each have elf bow and spear. Warband number 2 is Aragorn, Strider. And he has Haleth, son of Hama, with him. And we're going to talk about him in just a second because there's a reason why he gets stuck in this particular warband. Galadrim warrior. He has 1 Galadrim warrior with spear and shield. He has 3 Galadrim warriors with bow and spear, and he has 7 warriors of Rohan with shield. And I think I will go and let's talk about Haleth and why he appears in this particular warband. So Haleth is one of the special characters that appears in the War in Rohan book. He is a man Rohan infantry hero. He is an independent hero, which is why he can show up in Aragorn's warband. He costs 30 points. His fight value is 3. His strength is 3. His defense is 4. He only has 1 attack, 2 wounds, courage 5. He has 1 might, 1 wound, and 2 fate. His armor, sword, and bow, so he's another bow-armed hero in this list. His heroic actions are heroic defense, and his special rules are really why you take him. The first one is there's always hope. Whilst within 6 inches of Aragorn, Haleth increases his attacks to 2, so he gets to be a little more fighty when he's around Aragorn. And then the real rule, which is his reason for being, is fight to the last. If at the start of a fight phase, Haleth is engaged in combat, so he needs to be in the front rank for this to work. For the duration of the turn, Aragorn and other friendly Rohan infantry models within 6 inches of Haleth add 1 to their fight value. This benefit ends immediately if Haleth is slain. So as long as Haleth is alive and fighting, Aragorn becomes fight 7. Theoden becomes fight 6. Your other Rohan heroes go up, so you can have a fight 5 Gamling. So he is a great fight value buff for the army, which is I think why he is. I think he's an auto take in this army, and I think he's an auto take that goes into Aragorn's warband just to give all of those fight value buffs. And he is, because he's got 2 fight and heroic defense, he's actually kind of hard to take down, especially since he's a 1 might hero. If he's standing near Gamling, and you can give him that might point back each turn, so he's going to give that bonus for a while. So he's a decent ad. So that's the that's the reason he's in this warband. There's also one Galadrim warrior that I stuck in this warband who just has a spear, and his role in this warband is basically to stand behind Haleth and give him fight 5. And so he turns into effectively a fight 5 to attack hero with a spear support behind this guy, which suddenly makes him do a decent amount of damage when he's fighting, as long as he's got guys on either side. Okay, so warband number 3 is Gamling, captain of Rohan, and he has the royal standard. He also has 7 warriors of Rohan with shield. He has 4 Galadrim warriors, each of which have bow and spear, and he also has Aldor Rohan Archer in his warband, and I'll talk about him for a moment. Aldor Rohan Archer is the other new guy who shows up in War in Rohan. He is fight 3, strength 3, defense 4, 1 attack, 1 wound, 4 courage. He has 1 might, 1 will, 1 fate. He has armor, sword, and a bow. His heroic actions are heroic accuracy. And his special rule is unsteady nerves. And for those of you who kind of aren't aware of Aldor, if you go back and you watch the Helm's Deep scene, there's an old guy standing on top of the wall right before everything cooks off, who's got like the quivering bow in his hand. And his fingers slip and he shoots and skewers an orc in the neck, and that's what starts the battle, because everybody apparently suddenly realized that the Uruk-hai are in range. And why aren't we just shooting if the Uruk-hai are in range? Why are we just standing here staring at them? And so everybody lets loose.
Yeah, why did they get a whole bunch of like old farmer men to like get ready to aim? Like, you can't hold that for like over 10 seconds.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Obviously one of them's gonna release. Like the little 6-year-old kid's gonna do it too.
They're just standing there. Why don't we shoot them while they're just standing there instead of before they start running?
Because guys, the plot required it.
Yeah,
that's not fun.
True.
I mean, I have noticed, and we mentioned this in previous podcasts, that Aragorn tends to make a lot of his tactical decisions based on plot drama rather than any actual tactical sense. But I guess that's what happens when you get a drama queen and making the king.
True. I think Theoden did it on purpose, though, so he could say, "So it begins."
Why is that guy shooting? I haven't said "so it begins" yet.
Yeah, my lord, why are the old poor farmers pulling back their bowstrings? Just let them do it.
He slipped him a piece of bread beforehand. He's like, when I give you the signal, you fire that arrow ahead of time, and then I can say my cool phrase.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so to go back to a special rule, unsteady nerves. Aldor must always shoot first in the shoot phase, even before heroic shoots are resolved. Which is kind of a fun little rule, especially if he can like plink somebody who is going to shoot back at him. And the second rule is lucky shot. So Aldor must re-roll failed to hit into wound rolls when firing his bow. And I mean his shoot value is a 5+, so he's going to. I mean, he shoots like an orc, but he shoots like an orc that re-rolls. So effectively his shoot value is a 3+, because he has
kind of in between 4+ and 3+. Yeah. It's like 56% without mind.
What? Somebody needs to explain this to me, because he has a 1 in 3 chance to hit, and if that fails, he has another 1 in 3 chance to hit. And
yes.
Why isn't 1 in 3 and 1 in 3 2 and 3?
Well, because the formula for that would be 1 minus the chances of missing times the chances of missing, which turns out to be 1 minus 2/3 times 2/3, and so that equals 0.556 or something like that, or 0.56.
Okay.
No big deal. 0.56. Just throwing numbers out there. Like Nick, you are a genius. I'll tell you that. He did that like he just snapped his finger and just figured out the math that quickly.
All right. So anyway, he's got a decent chance to hit. The other reason he's interesting is he does have a point of might, and the reason I think you put this particular independent hero, he only costs 20 points, by the way, so he's not terribly expensive. The reason I think you put this independent hero next to Gamling is during the approach phases of the game when nobody else is spending might but him. He just can be blazing away with a free point of might a turn that he can use either to make himself hit or to make his hit into a wound. So he can actually do a lot of damage, a surprising amount of damage for a 20-point model. And so finally, the last warband in this list is Legolas Greenleaf, who's all on his own. And he just, obviously stands there. He's a one-figure drop, and he can stand there and shoot at people. So we end up with a grand total of 39 models. So, about average for an 800-point list. And you end up with a lot of heroes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 heroes in that list, and a lot of might. There is, I think, 14 might in the list to begin with. Plus, you have Aragorn's free might a turn. Plus, you have Gamling's 1 point of might regeneration to somebody in the list. And because you have a couple of 1-point heroes in here, you're probably going to get a lot of benefit out of that. So this is a list with a decent amount of models. They're all on foot, but a lot of might. And this is definitely a list where you want to maximize your shooting. And I think that's true of this Legendary Legion. It's obviously kind of about the shooting. It's got the 30-inch range on the bows. In this particular case, there are, I think, 11 Galadrim bows with 30-inch range. In addition, you've got Aldor, you've got Legolas, of course, and you've got Haleth with his extra bow as well. So, a pretty decent amount of firepower that comes in. Obviously, the problem with this list is when you close, you've got the majority of the list is a bunch of warriors of Rohan, but there's also a lot of fairly killy heroes in this list. Again, you've got 6 heroes in total. Aldor, probably the old guy, isn't somebody you want to be out in front hacking, but a lot of other guys who can do it, and they're infantry heroes, and you've got a decent amount of infantry, so you can have a front line that is kind of crunched together so that nobody's fighting more than one opponent. And you have a decent amount of elves. You've got a dozen elves that can run around behind the line to put fight 5 where you need it. I think that's how this particular list works. I mean, to go back to your point, Mick, on throwing spears.
Mm-hmm. I was just about to ask, actually.
Yeah. So there's 2 things that aren't in this list that I think show up a lot in my list that show up a lot in other people's lists. One of those are Royal Guard, and the other are throwing spears on the warriors of Rohan. And the reason I can never, occasionally if I have some points left over, I'll throw them on here. But the reason I tend not to do it is that at 2 points a pop for warriors of Rohan, that brings them up to, warriors of Rohan with throwing spears end up being 9 points on model. For those 9 points, you can buy another Galadrim. Another Galadrim with no extra stuff. But if then you can spend another point to give him a shield. If you want to spend another point, you can give him a spear. If you wanted to spend 2 more points, you could give him a bow. And it's the same thing with the Royal Guard. The Royal Guard costs 10 points a pop, which is the same as a Galadrim with a spear who has a higher fight value. And granted, and then if you're going to give them throwing spears to the Royal Guard, they go up to 12 points a pop, which is the same as a Galadrim with a bow and a spear. And frankly, I'd rather have the Galadrim with the bow and the spear that shoots 30 inches.
Sure. The only thing is, obviously, you can only have up to 1/3 of your warriors be Galadrim, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So some people may want to include some Rohan warriors with spears, just because if your Galadrim all have bows and you end up putting them somewhere else, then you will need some support. But obviously, ideally, you want to be putting them as spear supporters.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you do have to be careful with this list that your numbers don't get to be too small. If your numbers get kind of much smaller than one figure per 20, because you've just got a bunch of guys on foot, you can end up becoming very vulnerable to like mounted heroes if you can't have a dense line all the way across, and that can that kind of has more width than your opponent, and that can cause problems. I think if you are going to do that, I think probably the first thing that you do is you drop Aldor, the guy with the bow, the guy with the shaky hand bow, and then you can spend 20 points and give like maybe throwing spears to 10 of your guys on foot, something like that.
It's kind of hard because it does fight kind of like the movies, because you do typically put bows on your elves, so you do have like your elves in one place, your Rohan in the other place, heroes respectively in their own places. So it still brings like a cool dynamic to the game though, because it's basically straight from the movie. I actually painted up this army and played it as a ringer when I organized an Unexpected Tourney 2, and I had it as a prize. I wasn't playing competitively, of course, as a ringer, but it was a blast to play, like shooting that far. The only thing that got me is once combat hit. I mean, outside of Aragorn, there's not much you can do about that. And even Aragorn himself is squishy. Y'all, I don't know if y'all saw, like, there's a meme I posted around this time of the year this time last year. It was like me rolling 3 ones with Aragorn with like my head down on the mat, and it's like that stuff happens, and it's just like, oh, there goes Aragorn. So yeah, it's fun. It is fun, but it like all of our lists, I think that's what the joy of Legendary Legions is, bringing it. They're thematic. They have their strengths that when they work, it's really good, but they also have their weaknesses.
Yeah, I mean, I think with. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mick.
No, I was just supposed to say that I think in 2018, Jay Clare won the UK GT with it.
He did.
Actually, no, in 2019. 2018 was pre new edition. So in 2019, Jay won the GT with a 700 point version of it.
Right, and so one thing to keep in mind with this when you're playing it tactically is this list has gobs and gobs of might. So it's going to be standing there and shooting as your opponent closes. Once your opponent gets within 6 inches, this list starts calling a heroic move every turn. And it calls a heroic move every turn just so it can line up the right guys with the right opponents. So you can throw a random warrior with a guy behind him into the heavy hitter, while Aragorn goes in and chops a couple guys next to him in a heroic combat, and then maybe charges in afterwards. Haleth is also, I think, a key to this list and where he goes with respect to the other heroes, because you want to make sure, and this is another reason to call a heroic move, you want to make sure that Haleth with something like a Galadrim warrior with spear behind him is within 6 inches of Aragorn and goes into like one random warrior. And then your fight 7 Aragorn then can come in and take on the other guy's hero, or he can go in next to the other guy's hero and heroic combat so that he kills the random guy in front of him, and then you've got a fight 7 Aragorn that charged into the other guy's hero that may not have struck up. Or if the other guy strikes up, then Aragorn goes in and just kills 2 more random guys. And you can also, if you put Theoden in near Haleth, you suddenly got a fight 6 Theoden that can take out some captains. You want to always be calling the heroic moves because you've got all the might, and you can make sure that you get the right types of matchups against the right opponents, so you can kill people. It can actually kill very surprisingly quickly in close combat if you're doing that and making sure you have the right lineups.
I'll just add one thing. So Haleth makes all of your warriors and heroes within 6 inches +1 fight value, right?
Not all. It doesn't work on Legolas. It doesn't work on Gimli.
Right.
It doesn't work on the
But
elves.
your Rohan side. So
Yep. And Aragorn.
So would that potentially be an argument for taking Royal Guard and making them fight 5?
Yeah, you could, but on the other hand, you could just take an elf who's always fight 5, whether he's within 6 inches of Haleth or not, for virtually the same amount of points.
It just depends how many elves you have and how many other troops you have and where they are. So
yeah.
in a sense, I think there may potentially be an argument to some Royal Guards near Haleth, but obviously you don't want to have too many of them.
Yeah, that's the problem. I mean, if you've already maxed out on 1/3 elves, and then you're starting to buy Royal Guard, you're spending a lot of points on troops, and your troop numbers are going to start dropping.
Sure.
So it's, I mean, I kind of had them. I had the max amount of elves in this, and it was at the point where I was like, nah, I can't get anything else other than Warriors of Rohan without sacrificing the numbers that I want. So
cool.
Okay. Rainier, you wanna come off next here?
Yeah, so one of my favorite let's see, I play a lot of Fallen Realms. So as you guys know from this channel, whether that be Herald, Umbar, Corsairs, or Corsairs are Umbar, Khand and all Easterlings and stuff like that.
I play a whole bunch of different armies. I play Corsairs, I play Umbar, I play Corsairs of Umbar.
Corsairs of Black Numenoreans of Umbar. So one list that I haven't played when it comes to like evil men, because that's like what I love from this game is playing evil men, just the lure of it, like, oh, there's men fighting for Sauron or Saruman. But one army that I haven't played is Dunland. So my favorite Legendary Legion, of course, will go to them. Let me just go over what they got. So right off the bat, you have a Legendary Legion of Dunland. Thryden, of course, has to be your leader. It's comprised of Thryden, Gorolf, Ironskin, which is like, how do I explain Gorolf? Gorolf is just basically a 3 attack, what a berserker hero should be, basically. A 3 attack, 3 might. He has the ability to call free heroic defenses against people. He has piercing strike. He can lead 12. He's just a really good hero to add to the Dunland list. So that's him. He has Gorolf. There's also Frida Tallspear. She's a woman of Dunland. And both of them are fight 5 as well. Frida's fight 5. She has heroic defense, heroic strength, 3 might also. So that's another 3 might named captain. You go down the list. You also have the Oathmaker, who is that guy from the movie where he's like, "We shall die for Saruman," and he like cuts his hand, and like all of like the theater's like, "Oh, like what's this?" Like,
he's the hand. Why, that those never heal.
Yeah, and he goes into battle like, then 3 days later he died of like an infection,
sepsis.
Yeah, exactly. We shall die for Saruman. A little too early for you, buddy.
Yeah.
So he's another cheap Dunland hero. Typical 2 attacks, 2 wounds, but he also has 3 might. So there you go. His special rule is he gives fearless to Dunland wildmen, which is amazing. So within 6 inches of him, all of them go to fearless. And yeah. So that's pretty good. You also go down the list. You have, so those are all the named heroes: Gorolf, Frida, Thryden, Oathmaker. You also have a Dunland chieftain, which people usually bring for heroic march. Typical. The list also has Dunland warriors. You can bring them with a shield, a 2-handed axe, or a bow. They already have a 1-handed axe. And then you also have wild men of Dunland. You can give them for 1 point 2-handed axe, and this is actually in the profile that many people look over, but you can convert them, which is what I do, to give them just a 1-handed axe for free, and that gives you cheap strength for models that are 5 points. New things that got to the list in the Legion with Forge World models are Dunland Horsemen. Those are your typical Dunlin warriors mounted, only for 12 points, which is kind of a steal, in my opinion. Dunlending Huskarl, which are beautiful models, but a little overrated, or not overrated, overcost, in my opinion. Those are where you get your Fight 4 in the list and Spear in the list, which is lacking. They get Bodyguard, which will probably go on Thryden. They have a War Axe, which is basically a spear and a two-handed axe. And whenever they're within 3 inches from Thryden, they get 1+5. So that's where you get your spear support and Fight 4 in the list. Outside of that, go for it.
So they're actually Fight 3 to begin with, and then they only get a +1 fight value when they are supporting a friendly Dunlending, supporting a fight within 3 inches of a friendly Dunlending hero. So it doesn't need to be Thryden.
Oh, that's good to know.
But it's only when they support, and it only brings them up to Fight 4. So you get
Which
Fight
is
4.
Like 11 points for a guy that's base Fight 3 that like can potentially, it's not like, oh, he potentially becomes terrifying like an Agbar. It's
Right.
like, no, he potentially can spear support.
Yeah. We'll talk about them, I guess, some more when we talk about tactical applications of.
Oh yeah. So that's the Huskarl. And then the last model that many people know, Mix brought it with Saruman just a ton. People have brought it at tournaments where they spam him, which is a Creebane. A Creebane are basically the birds from the show. They are, I'll go through their profile because they're kind of unique. Fight 2, Strength 2, D3, 2 attacks, 4 wounds, and Courage 3. They have the Fly special rule, and their base size is about the same size as a Cav. Enemy models within, this is Keen Sight, enemy models within 12 inches of one or more Creebane gain the benefits from, do not gain the benefits from Stalk Unseen. So if you have a Legolas hiding behind a tree, or Wood Elves hiding behind trees, and you have a Creebane within 12 inches, they lose that bonus of Stalk Unseen or Elven Cloak. Furthermore, if you shoot at the Creebane, you only ever hit it on a natural 6. You cannot might it up. A natural 6, which is really, really good for the scenario game. Yeah, very, very good for the scenario game. They're also an infantry model, so they can pick up relics and stuff like that in the scenario game. They're only 20 points as well. So that's the basic of the list now, or of the Legendary Legion, of what it's comprised of. The special rules for it are very good, in my opinion. The first one is Death to the Forgoyle. They all get the Hatred of Rohan special rule. So they're all going to get a 1+ to wound for Rohan, which is amazing because they're already Strength 4 to Strength 5. So you come up against Rohan warriors who are max Defense 5, and you're just doing pretty good. You're wounding them basically on 3s with your guys because you're wounding them on 4s +1, so a 3. Outside of that, you have Dunlending Pride, which makes their banners a 6-inch range. That's pretty good. And then the last is a Dunlending Warcry. So the Dunlending Warcry is kind of like Theoden's Death Warcry, but this one is for Thryden. Thryden can call it once per game, and all friendly Dunlending models within 12 inches of him get 1+ to wound when making strikes. So think about this. Let's stack all this together. You come up against a Rohan model who's Defense 4, your Strength 4, you have a two-handed axe and Hatred. You're basically wounding those models on 2. Like, that's just insane. Like, you're killing stuff pretty well. Of course, the downside, your whole army is basically Fight 3. So those are the special rules. I kind of built my legendary list around those special rules and the heroes that come to bear. I'll go through it right now. So I brought an 800-point list as well. The first warband is Thryden mounted. He has a banner bearer with him, 2 horse, 3 Huskarl, so 3 Huskarl, 1 Creebane, 4 warriors with axe, and 5 warriors with bow. After that, I have Gurulf, which is the like basically heavy killy hero. He's accompanied by 4 warriors with axe, 3 warriors with shield and axe, 2 bow, and 2 cav. Then I have the Wildman Oathmaker. He's accompanied by 11 Wildmen, all of which have axe. The warband after that is Frida Tallspear. We didn't go over her profile that much, but I'll go over it right now. She has the ability to, if she's in combat or supporting someone, she stops a cav charge bonus of the opponent. So that's tailored basically for Rohan. She's leading 8 bow, 2 warriors with shield and axe, and 1 warrior with axe, and 1 wildman. And then my last warband is a chieftain with shield and 1-handed axe, leading 2 more horse and 1 crabane. So it's just a mismatch of a whole bunch of things. But the makeup is basically 58 models at 800, 15 bows, 7 cav, 2 crabane, and here's kind of the kicker, 14 might with a banner also. So it's basically just, I built the list to just overwhelm my opponent basically. This is probably a list I would play at the next tournament if I was able to go to one, if it wasn't for COVID and living in Korea. But I painted this army up, just finished it last week, actually completely finished it. And I just think 58 models is pretty good. Right there you've got a good sized horde. You have 7 cav, 2 crabane, so that's a lot of cav, and kind of crabane are special, but that's playing the objective pretty well. Bow fire, 15 bows. You can get in a bow fight with a lot of players. You can even get in a bow fight with elves while marching up the rest of the 43, or what is it? Yeah, the rest of the 43 models up to attack as your 15 are shooting. My chieftain in his warband, kind of just leading 2 horse and a crabane, is to place that chieftain wherever I want, because he's the one that has heroic march to get the army moving. And yeah, it's just a whole bunch of might basically. Each warband basically has 3 might outside of the chieftain, and it's just a might battery. Fight 3 kind of sucks, and if you come up against like a fight 4 elite army, they're going to take you out pretty well. But with heroes, all of them outside of the Oathmaker are fight 5. Moreover, let me see, I think most of them besides the Oathmaker get Rogue Strike, of course not the chieftain. But yeah, I just love the models, like beautiful models. It tags my goal of playing evil men. I haven't played them yet, so like it's to my goal of playing them as well. And I just love the idea of coming at with like 58 models, shooting, horses going all over the place, crabane going all over the place, and just doing like a weird freaky war cry in the middle of a tournament to have them kill things. But yeah, that's my take on it. I think one thing before y'all talk about it is, I think the horse, the cav, are a pretty good steal, to be honest, in this list, because at 12 points you're getting a defense 5 model with strength 4 piercing strike. They don't have fight 4, but still for 12 points, we talked about, I think it was a previous episode, with Easterlings with the cataphracts. If you don't take them with the Black Dragon upgrade, they're still just fight 3, like metallic things hitting up against you and bouncing off. Like these fight 3 models for only 12 points can actually kill things pretty well. Even if a hero doesn't roll a good number with the 6-inch banner, and I have like 1 cav going up against somebody, that's 4 attacks at strength 5. With the not, yeah, it's just pretty good. What do you guys think? I love the Legendary Legion. Oh my goodness, I can't wait till COVID ends so I could play this.
How many Huskarls do you have on the list?
I have 3.
3.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I also just completed this army, and I think I played it a grand total of once. I have a similar list built out to you. I put fewer bows in my list, and more crabane. So I think I had 4 crabane and 6 cav. Mm-hmm. And I think I had a few more Huskarls. And so the Huskarls are, I think 6 Huskarls on the list, and the Huskarls are actually useful. I think they're definitely, you only want a couple of them in each warband because they're only useful within 3 inches of a leader. So basically you have like 2 guys who, can kind of follow each leader around, and they get behind random other guy, random wild man or whatever, to get the +4 where you need it to make your opponent kind of think if a +4 hero charges in. So I think that they're useful. I mean, one thing I'm always on the fence, or one thing I have been on the fence with is, do you take one banner or do you take two?
Yeah, I was the same thing because the 6-inch range and you have such a large army. It's like, ooh, it's a steal for 25 points. But I don't know.
And you've got a large army in width, right? Because this isn't an army that's going to fight in 2 ranks across the board. You're going to have like 1 or 2 Huskarls here, Frida there, and everything else is going to be 1 deep. So this is definitely an army that wants to kind of spread out and wrap around your opponent. And because you don't have those spears to get the extra dice, having a banner nearby is really important for these guys who are at fight 3 and probably going to be losing tied fight values. Losing tied dual royals. So getting that extra die, not from the spear, but from the banner instead, is important. And, even an effective 12-inch diameter banner may not be enough. You may want a second one. You got to decide what do I take off in order to get that second one.
Yeah, many people I think feel like the Huskarls, when you see the list, or when you see like what you can bring, people probably think, okay, the Huskarls fix the no spear support thing. But I think back to what you say, it's the banner that fixes that. Because the banner gives everybody, you can throw a banner in with like a war band of wild men just like going off to the side to flank, and all of a sudden each wild man, if you piercing strike, of course, because why not, with strength 4 is going to have 2 rolls to win the fight. Then all of a sudden these 5 model warriors turn into really good. I mean, we've talked about the Goblin Town, just how Goblin Town with the Chittering Horde special rule just kind of makes it what it is, just makes it so easy. And I feel like wild men with banners in this list kind of semi could give it like a feel like that for getting a lot of bang for your buck. But yeah, you're right. I should definitely consider 2.
I mean, the other thing that's interesting about this is the dilemma that's caused when you go below 800 points with this list. Because at 800 points, you have to fit in you have to have Tharidan. Gorelf Iron Skin is kind of your tank, because his special rule is that he can call a free heroic defense a turn. So he's the guy that you just put in against the other guy's big hero, and you just call heroic defense every turn. And he has 3 attacks and could do decent damage when he wins. And he's the guy that squares off against your opponent's heavy hitter. He's kind of essential to the list. Frida Tall Spear, with her special rule of basically canceling out the mounted bonus. She's the one who kind of runs up behind whichever guys the opponent's mounted hero has charged this turn, and cancels his mounted bonus. So she's kind of essential to the list.
Even the Oathmaker too, because the Oathmaker gives the Wildman the Fearless special rule. Because he converts guys into Fearless, and these guys do not have the highest courage in the world. So he's essential to the list. And then the Dunlington Chieftain is the only model in the list that has March. So he's essential to the list. So, but when you get lower than 800 points, you have to drop one of these essential people from the list. And it's really a, you're sitting there going, who goes? I think I would drop Frida, to be honest, because she stops that hero, the mounted hero. But what Gorolf has over her is he can just munch through things like cheese. Like he is that berserker, like I said, that berserker type hero that everybody was craving when the book initially came out. But yeah, I'd probably drop Frida if it wasn't. But at an 800 point, like I was coming up with this list because I have all the models, and I was just thinking, I wish I could bring everybody in because all these models are so gorgeous. The new rules are so special. At 800, it's like that perfect sweet spot,
right,
to where you can bring literally everything in the Legion and you feel like all the bells and whistles, even if it's not like the most competitive, which it is. I think it's the Legion is pretty competitive, but you just get to bring everything at 800 points and just looks like such a blast to play.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the other candidate for being dropped is the Chieftain. If you're going to say, well, look, I've got Crebain with mobility, and I've got cheap cavalry with mobility, and I've got enough numbers that I can take some hits while I'm closing from shooting. So maybe I don't need that march.
Yeah. I don't know. That's true.
I think what's really interesting, because this is my first time kind of looking over the Legion, and maybe you guys will disagree with me. I think Gorolf is extremely strong in this list. Like I can't believe how good this model is. And I know it seems kind of weird because he's only defense 5, he's only got 2 wounds, but having that free heroic defense when you're fighting heroes, that's so massive. And I think it can't be understated how good heroic defense is, especially when you're the lower fight model. If you, because you could strike, and maybe you win that strike off war, but the fact that even if you didn't want to strike, just fighting him with a heroic defense, I mean, just to get that every turn, even if it was against a regular defense 5 or fight 5 model, being able to go, you're not hurting me, almost, or not guaranteed to not hurt me, but very likely not to hurt me, I just think and he gets it for free too. And then if he wants to use his 3 might for a strike, he can. So he can kind of determine when it's best to do so. And then with him being fight or strength 5 with an axe, I mean, strength 6 hero with 3 attacks, I mean that can do a ton of damage.
Yeah,
I mean, you get someone surrounded with that.
That's true. If you're calling a heroic defense, there's no reason not to pierce with him.
Exactly. So you're fight 5 strength 6 with a heroic defense every turn you're fighting a hero. You can do so much damage with this guy.
Yeah, I've seen him be taken into just regular Isengard lists all the time, like with all the roles that he can do. We talk about like him killing troops. We talk about him stopping mega heroes. That said, he is a little squishier than one would think. He kind of has that Huron complex where it's like, oh, look at this massive model that has all these special rules that can tear through things. One bad turn, he's dead. Like literally, like bam. Like you can if you use his might and you come across like a battle line, 2 guys beat you, they strike the defense 5, like 2 5s against him, and you fail your fate roll. Like he's dead. Like one of the guys from our group has taken him to a lot of events, Jesse, and he's done really well with him because he mixes him with Isengard. But one of his rounds, that thing happened. Like he threw him up against, I think it was Morannons or something. He threw him against something, and he like died turn 2 because he used one of the might the first round, and then he got 2 wounds and rolled the 1 on fate the next round. Like he is soft, but like for his points and in the list, like all the roles he does, like it's 70, amazing.
70 points for him. I mean, obviously you have to worry about magic, of course, because you transfix that heroic defense doesn't really make a difference.
But the joy of the list is there's, what is this, 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 war bands. Each hero has 3 might.
Exactly.
So even though he is the mega guy, like we're talking him. No one's even focused on Thryden bursting through things and killing through. No one's focused on Frida, who is still, I think she's still strength 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
And she's fight 5 too. So she's bursting through things. Heck, even the chieftain's bursting through things. I mean, chieftain with Frida in the background giving the chieftain fight 5 is an amazing combo. And then, it's just, I feel like there's a lot going on in the list because you're either, okay, I have to focus on the 2, I say heavy hitters. They're not super, super heavy hitters like Aragorn, but Thryden and Gorolf, you got to focus on them. But then you have a whole bunch of Cav coming at you, Crabane doing things. And I don't know.
For me, it's one of those things where it's hard to, I wouldn't say it outdoes Magic, because Magic can obviously just shut these guys down. They get in a fight and blah, blah, but it really makes Magic kind of go, oh, well, it's not really doing what I paid for you to do this game. But I want to get back, before we move on, I want to get back to one last thing, which was the Horsemen, which you mentioned. When you compare, I think most people would say like they don't love them, but I don't think anybody hates Warg Riders, right? Like Warg Riders are a pretty good cavalry model. And for the same points, they have almost identical profiles, with a shield, of course. But they also have the horsemen on this list have the ability to go to strength 5 if they piercing strike. So for them to be able to be strength 5 at the same points as a Warg Rider, I mean, they're basically really good options. I think the horse, and at 12 points is amazing for a horse model. I mean, we always talk about the Haradrim Raiders, and obviously, or I'm sorry, Serpent Guard, Haradrim Raider kind of thing. And we know that they're good because they get that +1, obviously, and they're fight 4. So for 13 points, that's good. But there's, that's why it's so unique, is because it's so cheap for that points. But these guys at 12 points, being able to go to strength 5, I think is very unique. And, they're the same points as a Warg Rider, and I don't think that should be understated.
Yeah, it goes back to the Huskarl kind of like both Matt and I would probably bring more Cav than Huskarl, or a similar amount, because you're literally paying one more point from a Huskarl, and you have a mounted warrior that's like has the potential of going 1 strength higher. Like, it's just like, why not? Even though you have a horde, you have a lot of big base sizes, and they probably not all of them will get into combat or do their maximized potential based on the scenery, or it's still like, why not bring 6? Like, they're just so point efficient.
Almost like a pseudo lance. Because when you're striking against defense 7, you use it. When you're striking against defense 6, and you think you may die, you don't have to.
All right, so we'll move on to my favorite Legendary Legion, which is the Kirith Ungol Legendary Legion. This has always been one of my favorite things from the movies, but also I just really, really like the models. Like, Shagrat has always been one of those models where I love using him. He's so much fun to use, and so when I can use him in the Legendary Legion, I just have so much fun with that concept. So we'll go over the army bonuses real quick. Basically, the requirements are you have to have Shagrat and you have to have Gorbag in it. Shagrat is always the leader. Orc heroes can only lead Orc models, and Uruk-hai warriors, Uruk-hai heroes can only lead Uruk-hai warriors, or Orc heroes can only lead Orc warriors. One of the friendly rules is Orcs and Uruk-hai gain +1 to wound if they're in contact in a fight together. We've talked in the past that we believe, even though it's not been FAQ'd, we pretty much believe that you have to be in base contact in the fight, not spear supporting. So unfortunately, you can't do Mordor Uruk-hai in the front with Orcs behind, getting that bonus for both of them. But we'll see. Maybe that'll be the case. But I imagine it'll be that case where both of them have to be in the fight, base to base. Another rule is keep track of how many models Gorbag and Shagrat have killed. And the person who has the least amount of kills can re-roll a single d6 when fighting, so they get their own little banner basically to try and help them catch up. Shelob adds 1 to her attack value against men, elf, dwarf, and hobbits. So that can also include evil men as well to keep in mind. So Easterlings, Dunland we just talked about, all those great things. So she, in a lot of situations, she is getting an extra dice to fight with, which is always a great thing. And then she has another special rule where if she is engaged in a fight, before she's engaged in a fight, she can sacrifice 1 model within 1 inch. And if she does that, she can re-roll any number of dice when making a dual roll. So it gives her basically, a banner. But what's interesting is if you have 3 attacks, you get 3 re-rolls because of that special rule. So it really makes her likely to win the fight.
It's a lot better than the banner.
Yeah, it's a lot better. She can just go, I'm fight 7. Here's my 3 attacks. I'm going to re-roll all of them because I fluffed them, and I'm going to go win this fight. So with the list, you're allowed to take Shagrat, Shelob, Gorbag. They're all at the current. They don't change, fortitude or anything like that. Shelob's still independent. You can take a Mordor Uruk-hai captain from the book. You can take an Orc shaman. You can take an Orc captain, and then Mordor Uruk-hai warriors and Orc warriors with their equipment as usual. Except I'm not sure if Mordor Uruk-hai can normally take a banner or not, but they can in this if they couldn't before.
I think they can.
Yeah, I think they can as well. So it's basically the same, but those are the limitations. Very small, it's very obvious what you're doing with the list. You're taking Mordor Uruk-hai with Shagrat, or if you decide to take an Uruk-hai Uruk-hai captain, you'll take them with that as well. So you can kind of do like a front rank, back rank kind of a thing. But I have made 2 lists that I think both of them work well at. And there are a couple variations, but I've gone through all the different points values, and I think that these 2 points values work very well for this Legion. One of them is real simple. It's 450 points, and I know it's kind of a rare points value to play games at, but if you do play a 450 points game, I think this could do really well. It is Shagrat with his shield and heavy armor, with 12 Mordor Uruk-hai with shields, Gorbag with shield, and 7 orcs with spear, 5 orcs with spear and shields, and Shelob. So it's 27 models at 450 points. Basic Mordor Uruk-hais with shields in the front, orcs with spears in the back. You've got your 2 heroes to fight, and then Shelob to get in there and fight as well. And then at 27 models at about 450, it's a pretty decent sized numbers as well. And it's just very simple. You get the 3 heroes, you get the front rank, back rank, and you can kind of do because at 450, Shelob is going to be a real issue to fight against at 450, because I don't know how you stop her unless you have a big hero at that point. And then you still have a good 2 warbands to fight with, and then Shagrat is still a phenomenal model to fight. And then if Gorbag can get himself into 2 models, he's fight 5 3 attacks as well, so they can do a lot of damage. This one I think is the best points value for this list. Is real simple, 450. Get those 3 heroes, get the front rank, back rank, and it's very hard to stop. But I did a more tournament style list as well. So one you would find more at points value you would find more at tournaments. So I did 600 points. And I'm not saying you'll find a ton of tournaments at 600, but you will find tournaments at 600. And that is Shagrat with shield and heavy armor. It is 12 Mordor Uruk-hai with shields. I've got Gorbag with shield, with 6 orcs with spear, 5 orcs with spear and shield, 1 orc with spear, shield, and banner, an orc captain with shield. I have 6 orcs with shield, 6 orcs with spears and shields, and Shelob. So it is 40 models at 600 points. You get a decent amount of numbers at 600 points to do damage. I went back and forth between do I take a Mordor Uruk-hai captain who's much better at fighting, and then the Mordor Uruk-hai who are obviously pretty good. But I wanted to get the numbers up on this, and then also I think the ability to sacrifice cheap models for Shelob to just do her ability, I think was another huge factor in that. So it's 40 models. It's got 8 might at 600 points, which is pretty good. You got March in there with the captain as well, which I think is also an important thing to get your models moving up the board. And you still got that front rank of Mordor Uruk-hai to fight through at fight 4, which will help you out in a long run. And then maybe the warband with the orc captain. You move around the sides with those and try to flank a little bit, and then hold the front line with the Mordor Uruk-hai. And then Shelob does what she does, goes over anything and fights. But yeah, those are my 2 lists for Cirith Ungol.
How many models do you have in your second one?
40 at 600 points.
Nice.
Yeah.
I was just gonna add. You say 450 is not that popular, but one of the big tournaments at the start of every season of GBHL is a 450-point tournament in Cardiff.
Okay, I'll rephrase that. It's not very popular in the U.S., I should say.
Yeah,
that's true. I don't think I've ever seen a 450-point tournament in the U.S.
Yeah. So it's one of those things.
I think it's a really cool format, though, because
mm-hmm.
not very much goes into the lists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really strip them off.
I mean, I have nothing against it. The issue is in U.S. tournaments, typically people are traveling long distances to get to them all the time. Mm-hmm. And if you do a 450-point tournament, there are going to be a lot of people that travel that are going to be like, nah, I want to play with more toys if I'm going to invest that much time in doing it. So I like both of these lists. I think both of these lists are great. I think the 450-point list is exactly what you need to do at 450 points. I think the 600-point list, I think you have also done it correctly. I think you do want more orcs than you want Uruk-hai. Mm-hmm. And I think the ratio is somewhere between 2/3 orcs to 3/4 orcs.
Yeah.
And the reason is for the animosity special rule, I think we've discussed on a prior podcast, the animosity special rule is only triggered when you have orcs and Uruk-hai fighting the same figure in the same fight. It is not triggered by spear supports. So the ideal situation you want to have is, on enemy hero or enemy figure or something like that, is 1 Uruk-hai, 1 orc in the front rank, and then 2 orcs as spear supports behind, 1 behind each of them. And that's why you want more orcs in this list than you have Uruk-hai, because the Uruk-hai can do a lot of damage, but the orcs can, an orc fighting these same guys, the Uruk-hai, can do an awful lot of damage too, and ups the Uruk-hai. So that's I think how you want to do it is if you can arrange it, and you have to be careful about this because the Uruk-hai and the orcs are segregated in their war bands. But if you can arrange it to mix and match, you want a front rank of orc Uruk-hai, orc Uruk-hai, orc Uruk-hai, orc Uruk-hai, with as many orc spears as you can behind.
I would actually add that in your front rank, because of the of your opponent's bows, they're going to be aiming mainly at the Uruk-hai. So you probably want more like 2 Uruks, 1 orc, 1 Uruk, 1 orc, 1 Uruk, 1 orc, then 2 Uruks, 1 orc. This sort of thing. Just because some of your Uruks are going to die.
Yeah, that's fine. That's a fair point.
I mean, everybody. I think this army, this specific legion, does well at lower points because you want to take advantage of the numbers, and when you have decent heroes that you do in this legion with Shelob and the Gorbag and Shagrat, you don't want to come up against Aragorns and Boromirs and things like that where they'll really do damage, and you don't have like magic to stop them. So when you get to the lower points and you have Shelob and you have Gorbag and Shagrat, you have to have heroes that can go against them to stop the killing, but then you also have the numbers on your side for this list as well. So I thought about, what would you do if you wanted, because 500 points is a relatively popular number. So, what would you do with that? Maybe you add a shaman, but that you think about that and you go, well, you don't really need a shaman for half the army being orcs. And so do you add a captain, right? Do you add a captain to make it 500? But at that point, you're just adding a captain to make it, 500 points. So you're actually losing in that scenario. And I thought, okay, so what about a 650 or 700 point list? And to be fair, there is a 650 list that's not terrible, which is you add a shaman as well. And then you would also add I think you get 3 extra models, so 43 models at 650. And that's not bad. But at 700 points, you then have to make a decision of, do I want to add just another captain, just like that situation at 450 to 500, where it'll be 650 to 700, or would I rather have no shaman with an orc captain and more models? So you can make that decision, but I think once you get to about 650, you want a shaman on your list. So I just don't think that this works past 650, in my opinion. You can make it work at 650, but I don't think it goes well past 650.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can probably take this thing up to 700 points if you had to, but I think your point that this army does not scale all that well is well taken. I think this is not a list that you want to take up at 800 points because at the end of the day, it's got 2 heavy hitters in the list. One of whom is Shagrat. The other one obviously is Super Shelob. And to get the full amount out of Shelob, she basically has to kill one of your own orcs a turn.
Yeah.
She has to do it. You do it during the move phase, at the start of your move phase, as long as nobody's charged her first. So you have to kind of plan ahead as to where she's going to be and what she's going to fight. So there are limitations on what she can do. And once you get up to 800 points, you start running into, folks with multiple threats and multiple big hitters. This list doesn't have an answer for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, let us know in the comment section below what you guys think of the list and which list was your favorite that we wrote. And let us know as well any lists you'd like us to review, and we'll go over those. And if you could leave a description as well of how you want the list to stay or not change that much. And let us know as well if there's anything you want us to talk about in future episodes. We're always looking for that, so please leave that if you want to hear something specifically. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week.
And there was one more thing.
Wait, one more thing.
Don't forget, leave your questions for the Q&A episode.
Yes, Q&A questions. Yes,
at some point in the future.
Don't forget that.